Hi, my name's Tim Melling and I work for Naturetrek, and I'm here to talk about the trips that they run to the fabulous country of Morocco. Very popular destination with deserts and mountains and lots of unfamiliar birds as well. We start off by flying into Marrakesh, which is good enough in itself. All the sights and smells are all different. The music. In the evening when we arrive, we usually have a time to go and visit the markets that are selling spices, and there are fire eaters and jugglers and acrobats and snake charmers and all these exotic things that you don't get in Britain. But then we go to bed for a sleep, and when you wake up in the morning, everything there is different. The smells, you wake up and there are white storks nesting on the buildings and flying around and bill clattering there. And the chirrups that sound a little bit like sparrows are mainly made up of house buntings, which are very, very common all over the cities in the north of Morocco. Certainly there. The pied wagtails are very, very different as well. These are the Moroccan pied wagtail with the funny mask around the face. Very, very different from the ones that we get in Britain here. Black kites are really common. They scavenge for food scraps and things like that, so they tend to be common where humans leave scraps of food and things like that. But it's great to see a bird that is so rare in Britain, to see it such a familiar in very, very large numbers around Marrakesh itself. Then it's time to head out, because Marrakesh is on the north side of the Atlas Mountains, and we've got to go over the top to get to the other side. And those mountains are really high. I mean, it's t-shirt weather, 70, 80 degrees in Marrakesh, and then it's sub-zero where you get snows at the top. Occasionally, we've gone through standing snow at the top of the passes there, but it's still exciting and it's different habitats to look at. The magpies in the Atlas Mountains are very different from the ones that we see in Britain. They've got this wonderful blue flash behind the eye, like a minor bird, and this is a different species now. It's been taxonomically split, and it's known as the Maghreb magpie, endemic to North Africa. The chaffinches too are very different. These are African chaffinches, but at the moment these are still considered a race of the British chaffinch. Spodiogenis is the name of it, but really, really pale and washed out, but very, very different from ours. Some birds are very, very familiar though. Crossbills just look like the ones that we get in Britain. Whenever we hit the pine woods, you can always hear the distinctive jip-jip calls of flocks of crossbills flying over in the Atlas Mountains. This is also the best chance we've got of seeing Levalence green woodpecker. Woodpeckers are never easy, and Levalence is no exception to that. It's about the same size and shape as a green woodpecker and the same basic pattern, except it lacks all that black around the face. It just has the little black mustache there, but it doesn't have all the black. Gives it a very, very different appearance there. Mousier's redstart is another common bird in the mountains there, a little bit smaller than our redstart, but it's still got orange underparts and an orange tail, and very striking white eyebrow and black upper parts and a wing flash. Again, one of the birds that everybody wants to see when they come to Morocco. Then, when you've gone over the Atlas Mountains and you get down to the other side, it's sweltering hot again. You're in the deserts and you're sharing it with dromedaries. But look at that backdrop of the Atlas Mountains. Amazing place. Here we visit a place called Ouarzazate, which is, when it's been raining, it's set in a bowl and you get lakes forming. And here you get migratory ducks like garganet. You get things like marbled teal, lots and lots of migratory waders that have been wintering in sub-Saharan Africa, little stints of wood sandpipers and greenshanks and things like that, and ruffs as well. Really, really good place, full of wildlife. And then when you move away from the wetlands, it gets very, very dry indeed. But these dry areas, particularly with some vegetation, are brilliant areas to look for the rare desert birds, many of the larks and things that are here. One of the common ones, where we sort of get out and we scan around until somebody finds something, and we keep sort of wandering around until we find something different. But here we are scanning for the larks. One of the common larks is the desert lark. It comes in lots of different forms depending on what the soil type is. In very, very dark basalty deserts, they're very grey, and in the sandy deserts, they're very, very sandy coloured. Also, we usually get the bar-tailed desert lark, which is a little bit smaller with a smaller bill and a band on the end of its tail when it flies, but otherwise pretty similar. Thekla lark, quite similar to crested lark, which we also get there, but a sweeter song, very common in Morocco there. And Temminck's hornlark as well, looks a bit like a shorelark, but it's more rufous on the back and plainer. Another common bird in the deserts of Morocco. Hoopoo lark, that's a really big lark with a big long down-curved beak like a hoopoo, and also big long legs, and it uses these legs to spring high in the air. It opens its wings like a parachute, a black and white parachute, and does somersaults, tumbling and singing. The display is absolutely awesome when you see a hoopoo lark singing. And these little birds, these are trumpeter finches, a bit like flocks of linnets, except they look very different. They're a sort of pinky grey-brown colour with a little orange beak, and they make a little noise like a child's toy trumpet as well. Funny little things, but very, very common in the deserts of Morocco. As are wheatears as well. This is the desert wheatear. We see several different species of wheatear, but this is a common one in the deserts. Occasionally turns up in Britain. And this is the thick-billed lark with a beak more like a hawfinch than a lark. This is actually quite a rare bird, quite difficult to find, but we usually manage it. Not failed yet, but they're always in much smaller numbers than the others, and they're never in the same place twice. And the other one that we always look out for here, we've got a couple of places that we try, but this is the Houbara. This is always elusive, probably because they've been hunted historically, very, very shy of humans, and keep themselves to themselves. But there are a few places where we can still find them. A good place for them is Houbaras in Morocco. Lanner falcons are quite common as well. As we drive down through the deserts, there are often lines and lines of pylons or telegraph poles, and you know, every few yards you'll see another bird sitting on top of these poles, and as often as not you get Lanner falcons. So, and sand grouse too as well. These are the crowned sand grouse. We also get spotted sand grouse. They've all got different distinctive calls, and you have to get out and listen to the calls that they're making to try and identify them, because they're all fairly similar when you see flocks of them flying around there. As we head over into the sub-Atlas, the mountains just before the Atlas Mountains, which are nowhere near as high, it's very, very spectacular, full of these biblical-like flat-topped villages made out of local mud and stone, and lots of palm trees as well. This is the village of Todra, and nearby you also get orchards where things like almonds and apricots grow, and this is a good place to look for the African blue tit, which is a different species from ours, very, very similar to blue tit, but has much more white in the crown, and instead of that lovely sky blue crown that ours have, this one has a royal navy blue crown just at the back there. But apart from that, they behave like it. You get lots of warblers passing through these orchards as well. This is the Sardinian warbler, very common, and you get less common things interspersed with them. Birds like Orphean warbler there, and also there's some little side valleys off into the sub-Atlas Mountains. This is the Dades Valley, which has this very, very spectacular road. There's lots of photographs of this on the internet. Everybody likes to photograph the Dades hairpins, and when you get to the top of the Dades Valley, it's full of enormous great cliffs, and this is one of the sites where we hope to find Benelli's eagle nesting. Nice big eagle, never common in Morocco. We get long-legged buzzards here as well, and this is also a good place for things like black wheatears, bigger than our wheatear and black, shiny black all over, but a tail pattern not dissimilar. Then we head across to a place called Erg Chebbi, which is the most southeasterly part of Morocco, and the furthest we travel in that direction. And here we always aim to arrive in the evening, and so we can set out early in the morning and be there for sunrise, because sunrise is very spectacular here. It casts long shadows over the sand dunes, creating really photogenic scenes. Here's a camel train that I photographed marching across the sand dunes of Erg Chebbi, and it's also a very famous place as being one of the few places in the whole of the Western Palearctic where you can see this rare bird, which is a desert sparrow. This is sat on a Berber rug, but you tend to get them around human habitation. They hang around where all the camels and the donkeys hang out. That's just like flocks of sparrows, but you do get house sparrows as well. In fact, here's a photograph of a house sparrow on the left and a desert sparrow on the right, and you can see the similar but very, very different. There are good numbers of things like white-crowned black wheatear here as well, and African desert warbler, which is different from the Asian desert warbler, which is the one that turns up in Britain occasionally. This one is a sandier, more rufous coloration and has a different song as well. So, and Tristram's warbler, this is an endemic to North Africa, named after Canon Tristram, who was a 19th century English clergyman who studied birds in the Middle East and North Africa. But this is, you know, it's only found in this area and it doesn't migrate very far, so a highly sought after bird for anybody visiting Morocco. Then, as we leave Erg Chebbi, we have to travel right the way across to the coast in this part of southern Morocco, and we pass lots of these jebels, these rock formations, and acacia trees as well. And the acacia trees are often full of migrating birds. Things like Benelli's warblers are common. I often see them in this kind of habitat. Usually, like you see chiffchaffs migrating through Britain on a good day, it's you've got Benelli's warblers there. And on the jebels, the rock formations, it's a good chance of finding things like Pharaoh eagle owl, so which is a split from common eagle owl, and it's a bit more smaller, and it's sandier coloured. That's the Pharaoh eagle owl. Then as we continue on through, we go through the valleys where they grow the Argan berries. The Argan trees grow nowhere else on the planet, only in this valley in Morocco. And and it's a very, very valuable oil for people use it for hair products and things like that. And the locals know that as well. So they look after them. They don't chop them down like they used to. They used to cut them down for fuel. But it's the trouble is that the more money they get from selling Argan trees, the more goats they buy, and the goats find Argan trees absolutely irresistible. This is the place where you get the famous tree climbing goats, where whole herds of the goats climb up to the top of the trees, and they eat the berries as well as the vegetation here. So also in amongst the trees here in this part of Morocco, it's a good fair bet for finding Barbary partridge. The only place in mainland Europe where you can find this is in Morocco. I remember the first time I went to Morocco, and we were all looking out for Barbary partridge, and a little flock of them ran across the road in front of us, and our Moroccan driver, went steering to try and run them over, and he was shouting, "Tagine, tagine," which is, tagine is the Moroccan stew, and he was wanting to run them over because he thought they were good to eat, and fortunately he missed them, and we all managed to see live Barbary partridges. This is also where you get the saffron fields. What they harvest is those tiny little stamens in the middle of the crocus flowers, and that makes saffron the most valuable spice in the world. And in this area you also get good numbers of cream-coloured courser, another highly sought-after bird in Morocco. Then we reach the coast. This is the Oued Souss, the estuary of the Souss River. And here there is one bird that we're always hoping to see, which is the black-crowned chagra. It's a kind of bush shrike that is found normally further south in Africa, but it has a wonderful wolf whistling call, and this is the place that we usually hope to find it. We find things like redneck nightjar and plain martin and a few other things here. But the other bird we want to see when we come to the coast is one of the Western Palearctic's rarest, and this is the Northern Bald Ibis. And they nest in caves on these remote sea cliffs. You can't get to the beaches below them. They're very inaccessible, but then they fly inland to go and feed in the fields. And they feed on things like scorpions, big invertebrates. Here's one, not very pretty, but I think beautifully attractive, beautifully ugly, I think is the expression for them. They have that lovely iridescent sheen on their plumage like crows do as well when you see them close and in the sunshine. And here, the whole flocks of them, we hope to find them on the fields feeding, but we often see them flying over. And here's a whole flock of them flying over a Naturetrek group by the coast in Morocco. Here's a slightly closer view of them as well. And so once we've seen those, we can just sit and relax and before they have a look at some of the birds of the wetlands of the coast here, like this big flock of flamingos that I took at dusk in the Oued Souss one year. And then it's back to Morocco to head back. So hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you very much.